Hi, it's James. Welcome to Cowboy Country. I'm so glad you could be here with us. Today I want to talk about, I'm really responding to a couple of Golden Blue Dudes videos, but I want to deal with the whole thing related to conference realignment, conference expansion, the whole notion that the Big Ten and the SEC want to gobble up as many good teams as they can and somehow break away from the NCAA. I'm not saying that that's not going to happen. But in my opinion, the more realistic option is that you're going to go from Power 5 to a 4-16 Superconference setup. And the reason I say this is because... Sorry, I lost the paper that had the other part of my notes. But I can give you the numbers as far as the Big Ten. The Big Ten said between Fox, CBS, and NBC, the total value of their TV deal is $1.2 billion. Now, that's a lot of money to wrap your head around. So I'm going to put that number up here. $1.2 billion. Now, as they stand, if you count USC and UCLA, that would put them at 16 teams. So $1.2 billion divided by 16 teams is $75 million each. That's an important number to remember, because Notre Dame said that they would join a conference if they... or they would stay independent as long as they could get $75 million. If they can get $75 million and be a part of that deal, if somehow the Big Ten were to renegotiate this and add Notre Dame plus one more team, and they bumped up that number a little bit more, and so that you had 18 teams that made $75 million apiece per year, then that would work. But if you take that same television deal and you add Cal, Stanford, Washington, Oregon, and they don't get any more money, then you would have $1.2 billion divided by 20 teams, and they would only get 60 million each. I know that only 60 million. Well, compared to 75, that's a big difference. I don't think the Big Ten wants to do that. I don't think the SEC wants to do that. I think the SEC is trying to get as close to that $1.2 billion from ESPN and whatever other TV... however they're going to form that, because you're not going to have every single game on ESPN. Like, granted, you got ESPN, ESPN2, and ESPNU, but the ESPN also has to deal with the ACC. So, if the rumor is true that those four teams would join and get a reduced payment, if you were to pay Cal, Stanford, Oregon, and Washington $50 million each, the math says the rest of the 16 teams would get $62.5 million. Now, if those four teams would be willing to join the Big Ten just so they can be a part of this new playoff, and they were willing to take only $40 million a year, then that means the other 16 would get $65 million. Here's the bottom line with all these numbers. The conferences are going to cap at 16 because they don't want to split up their TV revenue any more than they absolutely have to. There's a reason why for several years after Missouri and Texas A&M and Colorado and Nebraska left, they brought in TCU, they brought in West Virginia, and they stayed at 10 teams. The reason is because then they didn't have to divide up the TV revenue by 12. You only had to divide it up by 10. I think they're going to stay at 16. What I would do, this is just me. I'm not getting this from anybody else. What I would do to make this 4-16 team system work is I would have, now this is all contingent upon Notre Dame staying independent. If Notre Dame stays independent, I would want the ACC also to go to 16 from 14. They're currently at 14 teams. Have UCF and West Virginia join the ACC. Now this would mean the Big 12 would be back to 10. That's fine, because then you can add Arizona, Arizona State, Colorado, Utah, and Boise State and Memphis. You can add 6 teams. So that would mean the SEC would have 16, the ACC would have 16, the Big 10 would have 16, and the Big 12 would have 16. So there would be your 4 super conferences. Now what would happen to Washington State, Colorado, or Oregon State, Cal, and Stanford? Well, they would have to join the Mountain West, or the Pac-12 would absorb teams from the Mountain West, like a San Diego State, or San Jose State, or teams like that. The reason I think it's going to be 4-16 super conferences is because when they do the 12-team playoff, I believe the 4 super conferences, their conference champion will get an automatic bid into the playoff. But that also means that whatever's left of the Pac-12, the Mountain West, the AAC, those other conferences could get somebody in if they finish in the top 12. So let's just say, just for argument's sake, that Stanford has a super amazing year. They go 12-0. And they finish ranked number 9. They would actually get into the playoff. You'd have to make some kind of arrangement with the smaller conferences. And I tell you why. If this whole thing goes down like they're saying, I don't think it will. But if it does, if I'm wrong, and they bring, if the SEC and the Big Ten form this big, massive NFL-like conglomerate and break away from the NCAA, there are going to be schools that will sue them. The NCAA will probably sue them. So I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think you're going to have some super mega playoff with just 2 conferences. What's going to happen is the ACC needs to grow. The Big 12 absorbs some of those teams from the Pac-12. And you'll have 4 16-team conferences. I've been listening to Robert Allen a long time. He made that prediction a couple years ago. So, anyway, not this weekend, but next weekend I'm going to be making a trip down to Houston to do a special video just on their facilities. Robert suggested to me today that I include their indoor practice facility. If I can get some shots of that, I will include that as well. So what I think I'll do tomorrow is I wanted to do a series on the teams in the Big 12. Let's talk about them. Let's look at them more in depth. And we'll go team by team By the way, somebody pointed out to me that when I did the stadiums of the Big 12, that I forgot Texas Tech, and I truly am sorry. I apologize to those Texas Tech fans out there. To be honest, if I'm going to be completely... Yes, I think Boone Pickens Stadium is great. I also think Jones AT&T Stadium is really cool as well. I love the Spanish architecture. I love what they did when they, instead of completely bowling in the end zone, they kind of added seats up to a point and kept the existing video board. I loved how they did that. I think that was super cool. I also appreciate the fact that in Lubbock they've got this huge parking garage across the street. It's like 8 or 9 stories high. So kudos to Texas Tech for doing that. The only thing I don't understand is the whole tortilla thing. I don't get the throwing tortillas. That's just, every time I see that, I'm like, save those for, get you some grilled steak or chicken. Get you some salsa and sour cream. Get some guac if you can eat guac. I can't have guac, but get you some guac. Get some salsa and make fajitas. Don't throw those tortillas on the field. Make fajitas with them. That's what I would do with them. Anyway, from the bottom of my heart, love you guys. I am class 2004, and this channel is dedicated to all things Oklahoma State and Big 12. So, of course, I must admit, if the SEC did come calling, I would say yes. But I wouldn't want the Big 12 to disintegrate. I would still want the Big 12 to exist, even if that happened. So, love you guys. Thank you for watching. Have a great day. Bye.